So tonight we're going to start a new series, and it's going to be another biblical number. It's going to be the number 7. And the number 7 is used more than any other number in the Bible. It's like the foundation number of the Bible. It appears in the King James 463 times. When it says sevens, seventh, or sevenfold, if you include those, then it's 591 times. And of course, we're not going to cover all of them. It's way too much. Okay, so where we're going to start is in Genesis. And we taught on the flood before, but there's a part of the flood that we didn't teach about. And this is Genesis 7:4. At the beginning of the chapter, this is where Noah and his family are going to go into the ark. And verse 4 says, "For yet 7 days, and I will cause it to rain upon the earth." So, when they went into the ark, it wasn't like, boom, it starts raining. They had to wait 7 days. Now, I want to go back even further to creation. This is where 7 is the number that God chose. How many days did he create the earth? Did he create the universe? 6 days. And the 7th day, he rested. So, a week is 7 days. This was stated in creation that this number was important to God. It means completion. Getting back to the flood. So, when Noah's family went in the ark, God told him to stay there for 7 days. That's a whole week. You stay there a week before this happens. Then, when the flood is over, Noah has this formula to find out if the waters are gone. So he sends out a raven and a dove and lets them go. There was a window in the ark, and he let them go. The raven didn't come back. You know why? The raven would eat carrion. So there was a lot of dead stuff floating around there. But the dove came back. So you know what he did? He waited a week. Completion. So after a week, he sent out the dove. And the dove came back with an olive leaf in its mouth. But he still didn't leave yet, because that just meant the tops of the trees were showing. So he waited another 7 days. And then he sent the dove out again, and the dove never came back. So that's how we knew it was time to disembark. The waters came up from beneath, and the windows of heaven were open. This was the very first time that it ever rained. Period. So the people who didn't believe Noah are going, rain? What are you talking about? But Noah believed God. And then after he came out of the ark, God made a covenant with Noah. What was the covenant?
That he would never flood again.
You got it, Elsa. The rainbow. He made a covenant with Noah and with Noah's descendants and with all of the animals on the earth. He made a covenant that he would never again destroy all life on earth with a flood. So he put that rainbow in the sky. And people will say, hey, that's just science. Yeah, guess who created science? The Lord God created science. Now we're going to talk about a 7 that has to do with Abraham. And this is in Genesis 21, verses 22 through 32. So I'm going to condense the story. Abraham had dug a well. And in those days, water was like gold. Think about it. If you don't have water, you're going to die. Abimelech had servants who violently took over this well of Abraham. And Abraham was upset. And he spoke to Abimelech about it. And let me explain about Abimelech. Abimelech was a king of the Philistines. So all the kings of the Philistines were called Abimelech, just like all the kings of Egypt were called Pharaoh. It's not their name, it's their title. So they had names, but he's called Abimelech because he was the king of the Philistines. So Abraham in verse 25, he reproved Abimelech, and Abimelech says, hey, I didn't even know that they did that. He felt bad about it. So Abraham in verse 27, he gives them sheep, he gives them oxen, he's giving him all these gifts. And by the way, Abraham was extremely wealthy, so he could afford to give him these gifts. And he was a king, so he wanted to honor that king. Abraham wants to make a covenant with this king. Covenant's like a treaty. But then he did something, and this is where the 7 comes in. And Abraham set 7 ewe lambs, that's female lambs, of the flock all by themselves. 7. And Abimelech said unto Abraham, what's the meaning of this? Why are you setting these 7 ewe lambs by themselves? And Abraham said, for these 7 ewe lambs shall you take of my hand, that they may be a witness unto me that I have digged this well. The 7 is going to be the one that's going to be for the treaty, for the covenant. It's going to be a witness that Abraham had dug that well. And, you know, God made also a covenant with Abraham. And just because we're talking about covenants, I'm going to tell you about it. And God said that he would be blessed. He would bless those that bless him and curse those that curse him. He would be the father of a great nation. And his descendants were going to possess the land of Canaan, which, because God said it, it was a promise. So they called it the promised land. And that all the nations would be blessed by him. And that was a prophecy of Christ, because all nations, from Adam to the last person on earth, whoever that may be, have all been blessed because of Christ, the Lord Jesus. So the next 7 we're going to talk about is in Genesis 29. And this is going to be about Jacob. Now, without going into all the stories, Jacob was a deceiver. He got the birthright by deceiving his father. Well, in running from his brother, he ends up going to Mesopotamia, where Rebekah's brother, Laban, lives. And so he's going to go with him. And the minute he sees Rachel, it's love at first sight. And so this is what he says. This is Genesis 29:18. And Jacob loved Rachel and said, I will serve thee 7 years for Rachel, thy younger daughter. He had 2 daughters. He had an older daughter named Leah and this younger one named Rachel. And he said, hey, I'll work 7 years for her. But see, 7 again is a number of completion. He's going to complete that to earn the right to marry that daughter. And Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed unto him but a few days for the love that he had for her. The time just flew by because he knew he was going to get to marry Rachel. Well, guess what? The deceiver got deceived. And Laban gave him the older daughter, and he didn't even figure it out till morning. When the light, because, you know, they would wear a veil at the wedding, till the light hit her face, and hey, this is not Rachel. So, he got deceived, just like he was deceiving his father. So, he says, look, I still want Rachel. And so Laban says, fulfill her week. That means fulfill Leah's week, a bridal week, which, of course, is 7 days, the number of completion. And we will give thee also for this service which thou shalt serve with me yet 7 more years. So he works 14 years for Rachel.
What happens to
Oh no, he kept her.
Oh.
Oh yeah. He ended up
He had
having,
like two.
he ended up actually having 4 because he had Leah and her handmaiden. He had children with both of them. And then he had Rachel and her handmaiden, because when Rachel couldn't bear children, she was feeling left out. So she said, here, take my handmaiden. And she counted those as her children. So the 12 tribes were made up of 4 different women, one father.
That was not normal.
I'll put it this way. It wasn't right. What God made was one man for one woman. And Jesus reiterates that. But all kind of people do things that aren't right, even you and me. So now we're going to talk about Joseph. And this is going to be in Genesis 41. And what this is about is, I'm not going to go into the whole story of how Joseph got to Egypt. That's a whole different story. I'll just say he was sold by his brothers and ends up a slave, ends up unfairly in prison. But this is what I want to talk about. Pharaoh has a dream that is very troubling. And he had a dream about 7 fat cows. And then these skinny cows come and eat up the fat cows. Then there were 7 stalks of grain that were just beautiful and huge. And then there were these stalks that were all wind broken and weak. They came and devoured the good stalks. But what's interesting about this, it said, and when Pharaoh awoke, behold, it was a dream. And it came to pass in the morning that his spirit was troubled. This dream troubled him, and that was God's design. Well, finally somebody remembers that Joseph could interpret dreams, because he interpreted dreams in jail. So this butler who he had interpreted a dream for says, hey, I know somebody who can interpret dreams. So they yank him out of prison, shave him and clean him up, and bring him before Pharaoh. But this is beautiful what Joseph said. 41:16, and Joseph said to Pharaoh, it is not me. God shall give Pharaoh an answer of peace. See, Pharaoh was in turmoil. And he didn't just say that he's going to answer the dream, which he did. He's going to give him peace. The dream was given 2 times. And this is what Joseph said. And Joseph said unto Pharaoh, the dream of Pharaoh is one. Meaning there were 2 incidences in the dreams, but they were very similar things, right? God has showed Pharaoh what he is going to do. So, when Joseph interpreted the dream, this is what he said. And this was what God told him. There were going to be 7 years of plenty in Egypt, all over Egypt. It was just going to be abounding. And then the next 7 years would be famine, and that would devour the land. That was the interpretation of the dream. And so Pharaoh was like, hey, I need to appoint somebody who knows what they're doing so that they can store all of the good stuff for those 7 years. And he ends up appointing Joseph to be second in command of all of Egypt. Here is a Hebrew slave who becomes second in the command of Egypt. And that's because God always has his way of controlling his man to be where he wants to be. And then after that, he was able to bring, because of his position, he was able to bring his brothers and his father to Egypt, and they gave him the best land. That's all we're going to do tonight, but we'll probably get the whole Old Testament done next week. And then after that, we'll go to the New Testament.